Jeffrey Snover.
Excellent. Howdy, I'm Jeffrey Snover. You know, if you do the math, we spend an incredible percentage of our lives, our adult lives, at work. And it's worth, okay, well, let's try this. Is that working? There you go. If you do the math, we spend an incredible amount of percentage of our adult lives at work. And so it's worth taking some time to step back and figure out how we use that time to maximize the benefit to society, to our companies, and to ourselves and our careers. And so what I'm going to do today is to talk to you about this topic of thriving through transitions. I've got 3 goals for this talk. First is I'm going to talk about the role of transitions in your career. I'm going to talk about how transitions have played a key role in my career. And then I'm going to talk about what I believe is the largest transition any of us will have seen or will see in our careers. And that's the transition to the digital transformation. And again, the point of this is that chance favors the prepared mind. My goal is that you will learn something, gain some insight from this, so that you can accelerate and supercharge your careers. So I'm Jeffrey Snover. As of March 1st, I have a new position. I am the architect of the artificial intelligence layer on top of Office 365. Now, prior to that, I was the chief architect for Azure Storage and Cloud Edge, where I focused in on Azure Stack, bringing the cloud to on-premises. And before that, I was the chief architect for Windows Server. But most people will know me, especially in the DevOps community, as the inventor of PowerShell. Yeah. You like that? Okay. By the way, little plug here, now available on your favorite Linux. Happy days. I work at Microsoft. Microsoft has about 130,000 employees. We make about $110 billion in revenue, and our goal is to have double-digit growth. That means next year we need to find a way to grow over $11 billion. Just think about that for a second. Grow $11 billion, that's craziness. Anyway, our mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Fantastic, noble pursuit. Now, before I continue, I want to do a little survey. I want you to raise your hands if you believe in this hype of the digital transformation. Raise your hands. Okay, so not that so many. Now, keep your hands up. I want you to add to that the people who are going to retire in the next 3 years. Okay, if your hand's not up, you need to pay attention, okay? Because this digital transformation is a real thing. Now, there's 2 types of jobs. What I call the stair jobs. This is where you go to work every day and you work, work, work. There's always somebody in front of you. You do your work. You say, hey, it's been about time. Can I get a promotion? And they're like, no, not yet. Why? What do I got to do? And you just, year after year, kind of climb the ladder, climb the stair step of your career path. But every now and again, there's a disruption, a disruptive force. And these disruptive forces provide opportunities for you to accelerate your career. And this is what I call the elevator job. That if you've done it right, if you figured out how to take advantage of these, you can get on the elevator, and in a short of 1, 2, 3, 4 years, you can go up multiple levels faster than anybody else. And so what you want to do, obviously, is to get one of these elevator jobs. Now, the point of this is that these transitions, you know, if you figure them out, you see them coming, and you set your sail properly to catch the wind, these things can be the wind in your sails that really accelerate and propel your career. Or if you don't prepare, bad things can happen, right? Because these transitions produce winners and losers, okay? So, now, you've heard of Facebook. Everybody's heard of Facebook, right? Well, it turns out there was a Facebook before this Facebook. I found out about this original Facebook when I took my family to SeaWorld and walking down, and all of a sudden I hear this huge bellowing voice, "Hey, Jeffrey!" What? And I look, and it's Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft, one of the richest guys in the world. In a crowded SeaWorld, he picks my face, shouts out, "Hey, Jeffrey." Comes over, families get introduced, pleasantries, all this. I'm like, Steve Palmer knows me. What the heck? This is weird. Great, happy. And so afterwards, I was mentioning that to someone, and they said, yeah, it's because you're in his Facebook. I said, what's that mean? He said, well, Steve has a Facebook. Next to his bed, he's got a 3-ring binder. And in it, he's got a 3-ring binder. He's got a page for all the critical people in the company. So, what are the critical projects that we have? Who are the critical people behind those projects? What their background is, what they're working on, what are their challenges, et cetera. So you're obviously in his Facebook. And every night he looks at that and says, who are the people moving my company forward? And I was in his Facebook. Yay. So that's how he knew me. So very cool. So the point I want to make here is that as a technical fellow, I get to participate in these rewards conversations, right? We spend a lot of time on our people. And these conversations, we get in a room, we say, okay, how do those conversations go? We say, what are our critical projects? What are the key projects we are counting on to grow our business? Remember, got to grow $11 billion next year. Well, how am I going to do that, right? What are my key projects? And then, who are the key people on those critical projects? And then what we do is we say, those people, are they happy? What do we need to do? How do we need to keep them in the company? How do we keep them in the project? How do we make sure that their future, they see their future aligned with our futures and continue to deliver success for us? And when we do that, we compensate them. We compensate them very, very well. But Microsoft, just like you, everybody has a budget. We have a budget. So what does that mean? That means when we take and identify these key people driving our key projects and we compensate them exceedingly well, it draws down the budget. Where's that come from? Everybody else. It's just the reality. So now I'm going to talk about career transitions in my career. By the way, the punchline to that last conversation is when those meetings happen, you want to be in one bucket versus the other, okay? So I'm going to talk about career transitions and how they played a critical role in my career. I started off as a Unix developer. That picture is oddly accurate. It's not me, but I looked like that for many, many years. And at some point, I got a job at Digital Equipment Corporation. And at Digital, I was doing the stair job, working my butt off and, year by year, can I get a promo? No. Next year, maybe, et cetera. And then this thing came along called Windows NT. Windows NT was a transformation. And when I saw this, I went all in on Windows NT. I mean, this was exciting technology, right? So the idea was that for the first time, you could take a real operating system, because DOS wasn't a real operating system, Windows wasn't a real operating system, but NT was, written by Dave frickin' Cutler, who had done VMS for Digital, and now he was taking a real operating system and putting it on what? On PC economics hardware. Oh my heavens, that's a huge transformation. And so Digital was all in, I was all in. Well, actually, Digital was not all in. I was all in. I went all in. I read everything there was. I became the domain expert. I evangelized it within Digital, trying to get them all in, and I had various pockets of success. At some point, because I had become and established myself as the NT expert within Digital, we decided we were going to have a big showcase project for Digital with NT, and that was to take NetView and deport it to NT. And they came to me and asked me to be the chief architect for that project, and I accepted that. And this was just a fantastic project. I was all in. This was not a period of work-life balance. I was just working a ton of hours. I was all in. We had huge innovation. We got lots of press, when rewards after rewards after rewards. I mean, this was my baby, and it was successful. And this was my elevator job. Because in a matter of a few years, I became a digital consulting engineer. Now, a digital consulting engineer, that is a big deal. Digital consulting engineers, they're the likes of Dave frickin' Cutler, Bill frickin' Lang. If you take a look at Turing Award winners, a shocking percentage of Turing Award winners were digital consulting engineers. It really is sort of the engineer's engineer of the industry. So to get that job was just huge for me. So, yeah, and again, I look at that and I say, I can never get my head around that picture because these guys are such incredible engineers, but I'm going to own it. So that was a great transition, but there was another transition going on at the same time, and that was the transition for the industry to the PC. And digital did not survive this transition. Now, a lot of people will talk about the decline of digital, and Bill Gates was the guy who got it right. He says, yeah, people get it all wrong. He says, they think it was marketing or this or that, economics. He says, that's not it. The reason why digital declined and ultimately died was because they were excellent at something that no longer mattered. They were excellent, world-class, the best at something that no longer mattered. Now, here's the point of that. You might be at the very top of your game, but if your game doesn't matter, there's a transition and your game no longer matters, it will not protect you. Okay? So that's what happened to digital. This is what happened to digital. Transition happened, they were not in the right position, and they got flung off the boat. So as part of that, digital was selling off everything, and they sold my business and me to Computer Associates. I met with the CEO of Computer Associates, Charles Wang, decided he was insane, and instead of joining them, I decided to compete against them. So I looked up his number one competitor, it was Tivoli, and I said, hey, why don't you hire me, and I'll bring my product and my team to you, and we'll go compete against this guy. They thought, who the heck is this guy? And they checked it out, and it was real, so that's what we did. And so I took my product of my baby, NetView, and I brought it to Tivoli, and there I ran Tivoli's network management business for a number of years. Did very, very well, brought my team, fantastic experience. Until one day the CEO asked me out to lunch. We're having a great barbecue meal, and he asked this one question. He says, Jeffrey, you're one of my smartest, hardest working guys, and I got a problem with you. I said, problem with me? What's your problem? He says, well, you're working on a product that every time I sell it, I earn about $20,000. And you're not working on the product that every time I sell it, I earn between $2 and $20 million. So I just have one question for you, Jeffrey. Do you want to be relevant? Wow, wow, wow. So here I am working on my baby, right? I mean, I moved, I'm a New Englander. New Englanders stay in New England. I moved from New England to Texas to keep my baby going. I brought my team with me. They didn't move, they stayed. But I brought my team with me, did this amazing play, fantastic technology, and here's this guy saying, hey, if you want to go anywhere with your career, you got to be relevant. This isn't relevant because you only earn $20,000, whereas this other stuff is earning $2 to $20 million. So I had a tough choice to make. In the end, when I thought about it, what mattered to me was relevancy, right? I wanted to have an impact on the world. And so I made the transition and led one of their big main efforts. And that did very well for me, did very, very well for them, and put me on the radar screen of this guy. Bill was in the process of taking Windows and turning it into Windows Server. Now, if you recall in this time frame, this was around 1999, that was a time when the defining user experience of Windows was something we called the blue screen of death, okay? So the idea that you were going to take the blue screen of death and turn it into a server operating system, an operating system that you're going to run your business on, was really, I think most of the industry just laughed, like that's never going to happen. And in particular, they were having lots of problems around management. And so Bill said, hey, we got to go find some of the industry best and get them on this problem. Somehow I got on their radar screen and they hired me to do that. Now, so I was the chief architect for all the management products and technologies at Microsoft, and this is a time where it was all about the GUI. So literally, Microsoft had convinced itself that, hey, for any problem, if I can make it about the GUI, we win. If I don't make it about the GUI, we won't win. So make every problem about the GUI. GUI, okay? And that's great, and that's why they were wildly successful with Windows Server. Because now you could walk up to a Windows Server, and with the same skills you had learned using your PC, you could walk up to a server, click next, and have a server running on that machine. So wildly successful, fantastic idea. However, I saw the future. And I saw that there was going to be a transition to large data centers. And a large data center, it's not about walking up to a server and managing it. It's about managing tens of servers, hundreds of servers, hundreds of thousands of servers. And so a GUI-based management model was not going to work for that. And so I sat down, took a step, and said, hey, here's what we need to do. And I wrote it up as the Monad Manifesto. I clearly articulated the problem, our philosophy in addressing that problem, and then a roadmap for how to get from here to there. If you've never read this document and you're a PowerShell fan, I encourage you to read it. It is amazingly prescient and really kind of like provide a roadmap for the, 15, 20 years of development. It's shockingly accurate. At the time, this was you might have seen this org chart of Microsoft. I was up here, again, hired, sponsored by Bill Gates, leading all the Windows management efforts and technology, and I was promptly demoted. They're like, what are you, crazy? I mean, it's about the GUI, my friend. Which part of the GUI is confusing you, you know? And you want to work on this thing, like, okay, we're not going to stop you, but it's irrelevant. So we can't really keep you up here if you're going to work on something that's irrelevant. But I knew that they were wrong and I was right. So I took a demotion to work on Windows NT. Yeah, took a demotion. So anybody ever heard of this thing called Windows Vista? Okay, you laugh. You don't know the story. So here's the thing most people don't get, right? They think of Vista, they think, oh man, that was a bad release. No, my friends. That was the save. That was the save. Before Vista was this thing called Longhorn. This was the disaster, okay? So basically what had happened was Bill got in his head, .NET. Like everything has to move to .NET. And he's beating everybody up. And guess what? Bill beats people up, and he got to do .NET. So everyone's making the transition to .NET. And guess what? They do all sorts of stupid things, right? They let their brain go. They put .NET in the kernel. They put .NET in the common control dialog box. So let me get that in focus. You bring up Notepad. It's really, really quick. Consumes about 15K of working set. Now, when you go say save as, now we introduce manage code. Takes 2 minutes to come up and say, save, where would you like to save the file? And now you go from 15K to about 15 to 20 megabytes of working set. Just a completely dumb, stupid engineering decision. And obviously that did not go well. That project imploded spectacularly. Now, as we had this spectacular implosion and needed to do a reset, we called it the reset, what was it we were going to do? And everyone decided, well, it can't be that I'm a crap engineer, so it must be this .NET technology. So the knives and pitchforks and torches came out for .NET. No, .NET bad, .NET bad. Me good, .NET bad. And it's like, wait, no, that's wrong. Anyway, so at that point, they came up with the 7 rules to use .NET in Windows. It said, hey, stop being an idiot, using it everywhere. Here are the 7 rules to do this. Now, with everyone's heads and hearts in the right place. The reality is that these 7 rules were written in a way to ensure .NET would never get in Windows, okay? But instead of saying, oh, you can't use .NET, because the answer was, oh, it's great for you application developers, but not in the operating system, never in the operating system. But you couldn't say that, so they instead said, well, you can come in, but only after you meet these 7 rules, okay? And these were incredibly draconian rules, like crazy-ass rules. It's like, what? It was just clear it was like, don't even bother. So at that point, all Windows development stopped, all .NET development in Windows stopped, with one exception. PowerShell was all based upon .NET. It was the right technology, and they were wrong. So I pursued that. This began a period, a very dark period for me, as the vigor against .NET and the hatred against .NET then also turned to PowerShell and to me. And I had executives like screaming at me, exactly what part of effing Windows is confusing you, Jeffrey? I had executives telling me, hey, admins don't want command line interfaces. They want GUIs. I said, yeah, what did you do before you came to Microsoft? I said, well, I came here from college. I said, yeah, that's clear. You're just, no. So this is very bad. I mean, you just cannot imagine how dark and difficult this was for about 2 or 3 years. So what did I do? DevOps 101. We didn't have DevOps 101, but basically it turned out I was playing the DevOps playbook. So I found the Coalition of the Willing, right? I went and found the Exchange team. I'd had a problem. They needed to address this. And so they became our partners. And they were using it, and they loved it, and they were all in. And then when these Windows guys, on a pretty regular basis, would come and try and kill us, they'd hold a meeting, like, we're putting a stake through the heart of it meeting. I'd bring my Exchange buddies, and they'd have this conversation, and they're ready to put the stake in the heart. And the Exchange guys said, excuse me, we're a multi-billion-dollar business. We depend on these guys. Leave them alone. It's like, okay. So always have a big guy have your back. So that was successful. And we spent years, right? These were really hard rules. And we spent years getting to the point where we addressed every single one of them. We do these reviews. It's like, how are we doing? We're green. I said, well, no, green's not good enough. We need to be greener than green because they do not want us in. So we have to not just meet the bar. We have to exceed the bar on every single one of these by a wide margin so there can be no dispute. So, and guess what? We did it. It was incredibly hard, but we did it. And finally, we knocked on the door and we said, we're ready. We held a review. Turns out there are 8 rules to get .NET in Windows. 8th rule, no frickin' .NET in Windows. True story. But at the time, now time had passed, and it was clear this transition to large data centers was a real thing, and that our current approach of GUI-based management was not going to work. So we had some executives then sponsor us and say, no, this has to go in. We will not succeed at this unless we have this technology, and ultimately we shipped in Windows. Yay, PowerShell. This is me celebrating, obviously. Tell, right? That's me happy. And I then became the PowerShell hero. Happy days. So this is a transition, difficult time, came out, was successful, helped the Microsoft quite a bit. Took me 5 years to get my position back, but I finally got that back. And when we had an offsite, one of the executives said, hey, you were a pariah for years. I said, yeah, I was. He says, we were rooting for you. And I said, really? I didn't know that. Like, at all. So my encouragement to you is if you ever see somebody struggling and you're like rooting for them, do them a favor and reach out and tell them that. I mean, it really would have made a huge amount of difference and help, and I didn't know that. So now here's the point. 5 years to get my stripe back. Remember what I say about performance evaluation. Execs get in a room and say, what are the critical projects? Who are the critical people? Let's reward those people. 5 years, My name did not enter into this conversation. It was not the critical project. I was not the critical resource. And when they went and said, hey, let's get money to these top performers, guess where that came from? Inventing PowerShell cost me a lot of money. But it worked out. Right? It worked out because after having gotten my promotion back, I then became, people saw like, hey, actually this is pretty cool. That guy's not an idiot. And I got promoted to distinguished engineer and then chief architect for Windows System Center and Server. Now, just to be clear, chief architect for Windows Server. Okay? We have had 3 chief architects for Windows Server. Dave frickin' Cutler, Bill frickin' Lang, and myself. Like, I have no idea. I know, chief architect for Windows Server, that's something you put on your tombstone, like on the front of your tombstone, right? On the back, it's like, oh yeah, father, husband, you know, whatever. But on the front, chief architect of Windows Server. This is freaking incredible. And again, I always look at that and I have no idea how that happened, but it did, and I own it. So happy days. Now, did that job for a while, took on some additional responsibilities, and became technical fellow. I sent some mail to my family. I said, I got some bad news. Bad news is I was told today I will never be promoted again in my life. Good news is, it's because there's no place to go. This is the top of the technical ladder at Microsoft. So yay, happy days. So my point here is that, to quote the Garrett Morris, the transition to large data centers has been very, very good to me. This transition was the thing that allowed me to accelerate my career. Now I want to talk about this digital transformation and how I believe it will be the largest transition we have seen or you will see in your careers, and that this transition is going to provide new winners and new losers. So you want to plot that. Okay. Starts with Andreessen, right? Mark Andreessen, 2011, writes an article, says, software is going to eat the world. Well worth reading, short read, has essentially 2 points. Point number 1, software is eating traditional businesses. Amazon taking over bookstores, ads going to Google, music going to iTunes, Spotify, etc. Number 2, for those businesses that are not being replaced by software, the value chain of that product, software, is becoming a larger and larger component of the value chain of that product. So, example, cars. Today, cars have somewhere between 10 million and 100 million lines of code in them. The more valuable cars, the more code. The more code, the more valuable cars. Software comprises more and more of the value of products. Okay? Software is eating the world. He said, companies in every single industry need to assume that a software revolution is coming. So the question is he right? This is a list of the top companies in the world in 2017, ranked by market capitalization. The highlighted companies are those companies whose primary value is driven through software. Wow. Wow. This is the same list in 2011. The highlighted ones are the ones whose value is primarily driven through software. So, 2011, none of the top companies' primary value is software. Andreessen says software is going to take over the world. 6 years later, over half of them are in the top companies. A number of those I did not highlight, but they are also driving more and more of their business value through software, whether it be Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan or the auto companies, et cetera. You're seeing more and more of these companies see their competition and their growth coming from Silicon Valley and Seattle, et cetera, where they're setting up shop, competing for talent. Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. That allows us to see where the jobs offerings are. We see that the majority of more jobs, technical jobs, programming jobs, are being offered in non-traditional tech companies than traditional tech companies. So in terms of software taking over the world, we absolutely see this happening. Now, you might have heard of Moore's Law, right? Everybody hears of Moore's Law. Every keynote in the world talks about Moore's Law, the exponential growth of things. What I'm here to tell you is that there is a new Moore's Law, and that this new Moore's Law is more important for the next 20 years of the industry than this Moore's Law. This Moore's Law is not that interesting for the industry going forward. The new Moore's Law, I named it after Jeffrey Moore. Jeffrey Moore is a management consultant, and he said the following. He said, every business participates in two types of activities. What he called core activities. Core activities are those activities you want to invest in because they deliver differentiated customer value, differentiate you from your competitors, and allow you to charge a premium. And then something he called context activities. Basically think everything else. And there's only two types of things. And the idea here is that you want to invest in core and not invest in context, okay? So let me give you an example to get this in focus. Microsoft, our core is software. So we go out of our way to find the world's best software talent, we hire them, we treat them very well, etc. But to run the business, we have to have things like receptionists, shuttles, cafeterias, okay? So we have no technical fellows of the cafeterias, no distinguished engineers of the shuttles, no vice presidents of the receptionists. These are important things. We want good value from them, but we want to write a check, have them taken care of, and focus all of our energy and intention and effort on these core things, the things that deliver customer value and differentiate us. Now, then there's this thing called mission critical versus other. There's another axis to this. Definition of mission critical, pretty simple. You screw up, it's really, really bad. Screw up the lunch menu, doesn't really matter. So that's not mission critical. But the point is, hey, of course you want mission critical core. That's where you want to spend all your attention, right? But here's the gotcha. There's also mission critical context, okay? Mission critical context. Things that if they screw up will hurt you, but if you do them well, cannot help you. And that's the tricky thing. That's where people get stuck, because a ton of your investment and your energy and your investment and energy go into this quadrant, and you don't think about it. So you want to think about that. So how do you address this, right? We want to focus all of our energy on core, not on context. So you have this digital transformation story in focus. Happy days, great. How many of you get to go back to work, 2 days, go to your boss, hey, heard this thing about digital transformation. I'm telling you, it's the real deal. It's super important. We got to do it. I need 100 heads to go do that. Anybody think they can succeed with that? Right, no. And yet, you have to. You have to succeed with digital transformation. So how are you going to do that? And here's the answer. The people who are successful are the ones that create bandwidth and then invest that bandwidth in new innovation. So how do you create bandwidth out of the things you're doing today? I'll tell you that going forward, I believe in the hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud basically says there's cloud in the public cloud and cloud on premises. And what you want to do here, and the key strategy here, is to use software as a service. Now here's one that gets it clearly in focus, this mission critical but context. If it goes bad, it's really bad, but if it goes well, there's no upside. Mail, right? Mail. Mail, mission critical. Anybody think they can run their business if mail's gone for 2 weeks? I don't think so. Mail is mission critical. Anybody think that they can beat their competition because they can run mail better than them? Right? Can Alaska Airlines put more people on a plane because they run exchange better than American Airlines? Absolutely not. So if something is mission critical but it's not core and it's available as a service, write a check. Just let somebody else do that for you. You write a check, it costs you money, but what? But it frees up resources that you can then invest in innovation. So too, lift and shift, taking VMs and running them in the cloud. Running them in the cloud, you don't have to worry about hardware replacement, you don't have to worry about hardware upgrades, firmware upgrades, etc. And a whole bunch of the cloud vendors provide you free native management tools. Just click a button and get them. Okay? So lift and shift and SaaS allow you to create bandwidth. What do you do with that bandwidth? You invest in innovation. How do you invest in innovation? And the answer is you use native cloud application patterns. Once you free up some resources, do not go and repeat the mistakes of the past. Don't go do all the things that created the hole you find yourselves in. There are new cloud architectures, cloud services that allow you to leverage them. Somebody else handles the OS, somebody else handles the patching, somebody else handles the scale out and the capacity and blah, blah, blah. And you just call it through a REST API, or they call you through a function call, and you can focus all of your energy on the customer, delivering value to the customer. So, how do you address this with IT spend? How do you move the bulk of your IT spend from context to core? And the answer is you want to buy infrastructure and software as a service and then automate. And then you want to take that bandwidth and invest in innovation and automate. In both cases, you automate, but you do it for different reasons. On the one hand, you automate to create bandwidth so that you can use those people to invest in innovation. In the other side, with your new stuff, you automate so that you can do DevOps, right? That you can have a hypothesis, you have a repeatable process, you make a small change, you measure the outcome, and if you like it, you do it. Keep doing it. If you don't like it, you stop doing it. You have to be able to automate to do that quickly. So automation is key to both of these. At the heart of it, this digital transformation, kind of complex, but here's the heart of it. If you can only remember one thing, remember this. Build what differentiates you, buy what doesn't. Build what differentiates you, buy what doesn't. You do that, you're in good shape. This transition to digital transformation requires new heroes, right? So here's a set of stops and starts, okay? You should stop just clicking next. If you're one of those admins that, grew up in the Windows, hey, I just walk up to a machine, I click next, 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 and I get something, I deliver it to my customers, stop doing that, right? You got to start automating things. Get away from the GUI, step away from the GUI, my friends. Automate things. Next, stop crafting no value-add solutions. If you're just clicking next, the thing that you've delivered to your customers has no value add. You didn't understand their business. You didn't craft the technology to that business. You've added no value. Guess what? If you add no value, you are no value, right? So you want to start leveraging these softwares as service that can provide that service to free you and your talent up to invest. Stop building these snowflake servers and clouds, right? These little precious one-offs. Embrace DevOps. You're all here, you're doing it right. And then stop leveraging these using these low leverage architectures. Really, once you've even created the time, created the bandwidth, invest that bandwidth first in learning the new technologies. Functions, Lambda, whatever. Look, Microsoft has our technologies, AWS has theirs, Google has theirs. They're all great, right? But learn those new technologies, okay? Here's the sad reality. Sad reality is that this is an uncomfortable path, but that being uncomfortable is the new normal. Recently, as of March 1st, I decided to take my own advice. I'm now having done this, having been technical fellow, having kind of made it to the top, I'm now made a transition to be the architect for the Office 365 Intelligence Substrate. This is an AI layer on top of our most important asset, the Office 365 content from our customers. This is a job for which I am profoundly incompetent. Profoundly incompetent. I'm not being facetious, right? It's all about machine learning and AI that I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm spending all my time learning that. Guess what? Turns out machine learning, all about linear algebra and calculus. Good news is, I was top of my class in linear algebra and calculus. Bad news is, that was 40 years ago. Yeah. Somebody can remember what an eigenvector is and .NET dot products. Good Lord. I am profoundly uncomfortable with this job. I mean, on a regular basis, I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Profoundly uncomfortable. And I'm just having a blast. I mean, it is really, really fun. You might say, well, Jeffrey, okay, transitions can help accelerate your career, but you were sort of at the top. Like, what the hell? Why are you putting yourself through this misery? And the answer is really kind of twofold. One, I'm sort of a glutton for punishment, and I like learning new things. But the second is this. Careers are like sharks. They're either constantly moving forward or they die. Okay? So lastly, stop dialing it in. Invest in your careers. This will make you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is good. Uncomfortable means you're learning. Uncomfortable, if you're uncomfortable and the other guys are staying in their comfort zone, when it comes time to have that conversation, you will be this guy. You will be the person that, guy or gal, excuse me. You'll be the one who figured out this transition. You'll have invested to set your course, and when the wind comes, it will accelerate you, and the ones that don't will be this person. And again, why do we do this? Because at the end of the day, we have conversations like this. What are the key projects moving this company forward? Who are the critical people to make those projects succeed? How do we make sure they're happy and rewarded and align their futures with us? I hope this talk has been useful for you. I hope you can use it to supercharge your careers. My name's Jeffrey Snover. I'm on Twitter. Thank you for your time.
Hello. Okay. Jeffrey, thank you very much. That was awesome as always. We have about 2 minutes if you wanted to try to do some questions. We have mics over there. Does anybody have questions for Jeffrey? I think you're sticking around too, right? A little bit? Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll bring that up in a bit. So we have the fishbowl later.
Questions?
No?
Really? None? Really? Anybody? You know, actually, that was the thing. I thought about that. You know, like, hey, do I make this transition or retire? Because, boy, it's a pain in the butt. And I decided, no, I'm not done. I'm going to stick with this and have a new chapter. And indeed, the AI, I just see huge potential and, you know, lots of things I think people aren't paying attention to. I'm particularly focused in on, like, ethics in AI and making sure that we get that right. And I think that's something, a voice that I can bring to the conversation. And I think I got more to contribute.
Dominica,
Thanks.
far side? That blue box is a microphone, if you wouldn't mind talking into the box.
I can repeat it.
It's foam, so you can throw it.
One of the last things you said was that your career is like a shark. If it's not always moving, it dies. What do you think about family leave?
Family leave, yeah. So
and like paid paternal leave and
yeah,
like
I'll tell you, this is something I screwed up. I screwed that up. So we adopted our kids, and when we did that, I sort of like, oh, work's really important, work needs me, and I took a very small amount of time off and then just ran back to the office. And I look at that now and view that as a profound and one of the worst mistakes that I ever made. So the reality is, you know, at the end of the day, you know, someone said, work for Paul Tsongas, and Senator Tsongas ran for president. At some point, he said, you know, on your deathbed, nobody ever says, well, I wish I'd spent more time in the office, right? So yeah, family first. I'm very adamant about family first. I strongly encourage you. Look, you know, your career spans time. This transition, it's not going to happen this year. These things take a while, right? But you don't want to, so it's, yeah, I would always put family first. And I didn't, and I consider it a huge mistake.
Okay, that's all we have time for at the moment.
Okay.
I apologize, but Jeffrey will be around, and we'll make sure we get you. Thank you very much.